flown out of a snowstorm 1,200 miles over a mountain range into another snowstorm to waste a day like this. My brother-in-law diabolically suggested it. It was stupid. But it was the most important thing we could. One morning at breakfast, I noticed that my sister had a little battery-powered whisk on her counter that she used to froth the milk in her coffee in the morning. My wife has exactly the same whisk. But my sister had a little stand that it sat in. And I thought, and said out loud, I'll have to go to Amazon and get one of those for my wife. My brother-in-law said, we have tools. We have a shop. We could make one. Now, you have to understand the context here. My father was an art history professor and a silversmith. And so I grew up with interesting objects in the house that none of my other friends had. Decanters in odd places. I couldn't understand why my childhood friends didn't have their own custom-made baby cups, or why their mothers didn't have bespoke wedding crowns out of sterling silver with pearls that were then passed on to their granddaughters. And I, most of all, didn't understand why when I had dinner at my friends' houses that they didn't have individual place settings at the table. Now, my father had maintained a shop in the house for my entire life, and I spent a lot of Saturday afternoons watching him craft interesting objects, pieces of jewelry, flatware, silverware of all kinds of designs. But when Dad had a stroke, and we had to move him in with my sister and brother-in-law in Boulder, we had to move him across the country. And that meant dismantling his shop, moving out all the woodworking tools, all the metalworking tools, all of the raw materials, the planks of cherry and the sheets of metal and all of the things that went into, for example, making that house. And those all got piled into my brother-in-law Doug's shop, including the silhouette of Dad that was on his office door at his first teaching post in the 50s. So, following Doug's diabolical suggestion, we suited up. We put on our coats to brave the November cold in his unheated shop and start to make a stand for the whisk. We had to organize the tools a little bit. We had to find an appropriate piece of metal to make the stand out of. So we found the right piece of metal. We clamped it onto the edge of a workbench. We immediately broke 3 jeweler's saws. And I heard a little voice over my shoulder saying, no, use a jigsaw for that. And sure enough, that was the right tool. And so cut along a mark we had scribed, and the voice piped up again. It said, watch the line. You're drifting. Sure enough, I was. I corrected myself. Soon enough, I had a piece of metal in my hand of the right size to make that stand. Went over to the form and took the right hammer off the rack, started hammering. Start from the outside, reminded the voice. Yeah, I guess so. I started from the outside. And then turned it around, and being ambidextrous is a help here. I started from the other side. And after a while, the cup was the right shape to hold the whisk. And then Doug and I started to bend the angles so that it would stand up straight. This took a little doing. Had to find the right edge to bend it against. That voice was there again. It said, overshoot just a little bit. It's going to bounce back. I knew that. I've done this before. And then the complicated angle at the top, fold it over on itself. But then we realized that we were looking at a piece of metal that needed polished. And so we found the polish, we found the cloth tool to attach to the drill to polish it up. Edges around the bends, underneath the lip. Found a small tool to polish along the inside edge. And then, as we had finished, as we had gotten the metal just shiny enough, the sun came out, shined through the windows and glinted off of the stand for this whisk. And so my wife has perhaps the only sterling silver whisk stand in the Western world, which was a complete waste of time for something that we could have gotten off of the internet. But more importantly, I got to spend an afternoon with my brother Doug. And even more importantly, 5 years after he's gone, I got to spend a day in the shop with my father. Mr. Toastmaster.